The billionaire heir to a massive shipping empire was getting married, celebrating with a high-profile parade of 99 luxury yachts along the West Coast. My best friend excitedly dragged me to the harbor to watch the spectacle. Out of habit, I snapped a photo first, wanting to share it with my boyfriend right away. But a second later, two familiar figures walked right into my camera frame. My boyfriend, who was supposed to be working overtime, was wearing a bespoke designer tuxedo. He was holding another woman's hand, leading her onto the glittering flagship yacht. I froze, my mind going blank. Anger surged through me, and I wanted to rush forward to confront him, but my best friend grabbed my arm, stopping me. Chloe, Elena was always meant to be Julian's fiancé. If you make a scene now, you're just going to embarrass yourself. Julian pretended to be broke and lived in a cramped basement with you for 5 years. I actually felt bad for how much he had to hold back. As your best friend, I'm advising you to have some self-respect. Don't be a shameless homewrecker. The cold ocean breeze slapped my face, and my heart turned completely to ice. My boyfriend of 8 years had been lying to me this whole time. And the girl I treated like my own sister had known all along and kept it from me. My phone buzzed with a Snapchat notification. It was a message from Julian. "Babe, I just got off work. I took 2 more Uber rides to make some extra cash. Don't be jealous of other people. If I work a little harder, I'll save enough for an engagement ring soon and propose to you." Looking at the elegant billionaire standing on the yacht, I felt nothing but pure disgust. No need. My mom wants me to go back home for some blind dates. The reporters swarmed the couple. Julian casually looked back. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted me standing outside the crowd. The smile on his face froze instantly. He reflexively let go of Elena's trailing wedding gown. "I thought you said she wouldn't know. Who brought her here?" He pushed past the crowd and leaped off the deck of the yacht. Amidst the gasps of the onlookers, he ran toward me desperately, panic written all over his face. "Babe, let me explain. I didn't mean to keep this from you. I was just afraid that the status gap between us would make you feel insecure. Elena and I are just putting on a show for the families. Please don't make a scene, okay?" Holding back my tears, I violently shook off his hand. "You're still trying to lie to me even now." I looked past him at Elena, who was wearing a satin, diamond-encrusted wedding dress, looking as elegant as a white swan. Around her neck was a sapphire necklace that had recently been auctioned for $20 million. Meanwhile, Julian, the man who had been with me for 8 years, couldn't even afford a $300 engagement ring. My best friend, Vivian Cole, frowned. "Chloe, are you really trying to ruin the wedding of the century? Let's be real here. You have no right to throw a tantrum. Can you grow up for once?" I stared at her in utter disbelief. We had been best friends for over a decade. After her parents divorced, I was the one who brought her into my home, sharing my parents' love with her. I had even cut down on my own expenses and begged my parents to help pay for her college tuition. And now, she was standing here, accusing me to defend outsiders. Elena let out a soft laugh, stepping up to Julian's side and shaking her head at me. "Chloe, even your best friend has more class than you. Do you know what kind of event this is? Who gave you the courage to come here and cause trouble?" My chest felt incredibly tight, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. My boyfriend of 8 years is suddenly marrying someone else. Am I not even allowed to ask for an explanation? "Shut up." Seeing the reporters sniffing out a scandal and starting to gather around, Julian lowered his voice, warning me coldly. "Do you want to broadcast our private business to the entire world? Vivian, please take her back and help her calm down." Vivian nodded, locking her hands tightly around my shoulders. "Don't worry, Julian. I'll make sure she leaves." It wasn't until Julian and Elena, arm in arm, boarded the yacht again under the spotlight that Vivian finally let me go. She sighed with deep envy. "They look so perfect together. Chloe, take my advice. You and Julian belong to different worlds. Give up and stop clinging to him." Vivian hailed an Uber. "I still have things to do at the clinic, so I won't ride back with you." "Chloe, people need to have self-respect. I don't want a best friend who is a homewrecker." It finally clicked. She had purposely brought me here tonight to witness Julian and Elena's wedding. A bitter taste spread through my chest. The Uber driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror, and the silent judgment in his eyes made me feel like I was sitting on needles. I returned to our tiny, 100-square-foot basement. As soon as I pushed the door open, the entire room was visible. A small twin bed, a desk squeezed tightly against it, and on the desk lay a half-ironed Louis Vuitton shirt. Julian had told me he was competing for a promotion and begged me to buy him a luxury piece to look the part. I had gritted my teeth and spent a whole month's salary on it. On the day I swiped my card, he had laughed so hard seeing how much it paid me to spend that money. Now, the image of the $20 million necklace he gave Elena flashed through my mind. He wasn't happy because he received a gift. He was laughing at how pathetic and poor I was. My eyes stung. I grabbed a pair of scissors, shredded the shirt to pieces, and threw it into the trash can. Then, I rummaged through the room, grabbed all of Julian's things, threw them into a suitcase, and shoved it outside the door. I sent him a text. "Julian, we're done. I threw your stuff out. Pick it up yourself." Right after sending it, I blocked and deleted him on Snapchat. After doing all this, I collapsed onto the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. I remembered our sophomore year in college. I was working part-time at the cafeteria when I overheard Julian complaining that he could barely afford food. Feeling sorry for him, I gave him my own meal. His expression back then was so strange, but I was too busy working to think much of it. Now that I think about it, he must have found me incredibly hilarious. A broke student working for tuition, actually pitying the heir of a multi-billion-dollar shipping empire. Later, he started pursuing me. After graduation, I followed him to the West Coast to build a life. The West Coast is incredibly expensive, and rent is insanely high. Even this tiny basement cost me $3,000 a month. Julian said he wanted to save up to marry me and buy us a big house, so I took on the burden of the rent. But the first time he saved up $10,000, he supposedly clicked on a phishing link, and his account was wiped out. The second time, he allegedly donated it to a little girl with leukemia. The third time, he got into a car accident and had to pay for damages. For 5 whole years, he hadn't saved a single penny. He couldn't even afford a cheap $500 engagement ring. But it wasn't that he didn't have $500. He just didn't want to marry me. Suddenly, the front door was pushed open from the outside. A dripping wet Julian rushed in and hugged me tightly. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his voice trembling. "Babe, please don't break up with me. Just wait for me a little longer. I promise I'll marry you." The cold rainwater on his body soaked through my clothes. For a split second, my heart softened. But then my eyes landed on the shredded designer shirt in the trash can. I snapped back to reality and pushed him away. "Julian, you're married." His body stiffened, but he hugged me even tighter. "Chloe, my older brother passed away, and my dad had a brain hemorrhage and is still in a coma. Your family is ordinary, so you don't understand how dangerous high society can be. Only Elena's family can help me secure my position right now. But the only person I love is you. The only one I want to marry is you. Can you just wait for me for another 6 months? Just until I stabilize things." His voice grew softer, and my vision started to blur. I suddenly remembered a month ago, when we were preparing to celebrate our 8th anniversary. He had received a phone call, turned pale, and told me his family had an emergency, and he had to leave for a while. I had stuffed a debit card into his hand. It had $100,000 on it, every single penny I had saved from working for 5 years. Because he had promised me countless times that once we saved enough for a down payment, we would move back to my hometown, get married, and settle down. So I had worked myself to the bone to save that money. "Julian, I don't understand your high society struggles. But I've already waited for you, for 5 years. I don't want to wait anymore. I promised my mom that if I wasn't married by 27, I would go back home and let her set me up." Julian gripped my shoulders tightly, his eyes bloodshot. "You've been with me for 8 years. How can you marry someone else?" "I won't allow it, Chloe. I won't." Anger flared in me, and I slapped him across the face. "Julian, you are married to Elena now. You have no right to control me. It's just a marriage of convenience. You waited 5 years, so why can't you wait another 6 months? Don't worry, Elena is very open-minded. As long as you stay quiet and behave, she won't cause trouble for you." I was shaking with pure rage. I used all my strength to push him out the door. "Get out. I never want to see you again." Through the closed door, Julian's muffled voice continued, trying to coax me into being his kept woman. "I'll buy you a villa, okay? You can move your parents in. I'll give you $10,000 a month for living expenses. You won't have to wake up early and squeeze onto the subway for work anymore. I'll take care of you." So, he had seen how hard I struggled over the past 5 years. He had just chosen to ignore it. Tears streamed down my face as I collapsed onto the floor, completely exhausted. The man I had loved for 8 years had turned into an absolute monster on the other side of the door. My bones felt icy cold, but my skin was burning hot, and my consciousness began to slip. I had suffered from severe pneumonia a few years ago. Whenever I ran a high fever, it became extremely dangerous. I dragged myself to open the door, my voice incredibly raspy. "Julian, can you take me to the hose?" Before I could finish, his phone rang. He checked it, his face changing instantly, and he rushed toward the elevator. "Elena is feeling unwell. Just hang in there for a bit. I'll call Vivian to come over." His retreating back distorted in my vision. I couldn't hold on any longer and blacked out. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed. Vivian was bending over me, replacing my cooling patch and checking my forehead with the back of her hand. "Good, your fever is going down." "Chloe, it's just a breakup. How did you end up like this?" Her eyes were filled with pity. One is a billionaire heir, and the other is a wealthy heiress. Messing with them was never going to end well for you. When did you find out? I stared directly into her eyes, watching her every expression. Vivian bit her lip, avoiding my gaze. The year he first started dating you, he confessed his identity to me. He gave me $1 million and set me up with a job. The only condition was that I had to help him hide his secret. He said that saving up for a ring and a house was too easy for him, so I was the one who suggested he use fake scams, donations, and car accidents to drag out the time. $1 million was all it took to buy out our 10-year friendship. Money and a bright future are hard to resist. I couldn't even find the energy to blame her. But, Vivian, leave. I'll pretend I never had you as a friend. Vivian's eyes widened. You're ending our friendship over this little thing? Fine, Chloe. Don't regret this. She slammed the door and left. Shortly after, a nurse came in to administer my four. The needle missed my vein over 10 times, making me gasp in pain. The nurse looked at me with a mocking smile and tossed a local tabloid newspaper onto my bed. Miss Shun, you're famous now. Confused, I looked down and a massive headline caught my eye. On his wedding night, the billionaire shipping heir was seducing his slum mistress, leaving the wealthy heiress devastated. My private photos took up half the page. My pupils dilated. Only Julian had those photos. He had begged me to take them on his birthday. Rage boiled in my chest. Just as I was about to call him, my phone rang. It was Julian. I went to see last night, and Elena was upset, so she leaked those to the media. Just let her vent her anger. Don't make a big deal out of it. Before I could say a word, he hung up. Meeting the nurse's judging eyes, I didn't even have the energy to explain myself. I simply closed my eyes. But I never expected Vivian to publicly label me a gold digger. In front of the reporter's cameras, she put on an act of deep disappointment. Chloe and I have been friends for over 10 years. I tried to warn her not to interfere in other people's relationships. But she wouldn't listen. She was obsessed with marrying into money and kept harassing Mr. Vance. The video went viral, shooting straight to the top of the trending page on Twitter. My brain buzzed. I stared blankly at Vivian's face on the screen, unable to believe she would stab me in the back like this. But before I could even process my best friend's betrayal, my phone rang again. It was my mother, her voice filled with tears. Chloe, your sister Emily had an accident. Your sister saw Vivian's interview on the news. She was so distracted and panicked that she didn't see the construction site. A falling steel bar pierced her chest. The doctor said there's a matching heart available right now, but there's a strict time limit. If we can't raise the $100,000 for the surgery fee within an hour, the heart goes to the next patient on the list. Taking out a loan on our house will take too long. Do you have $100,000 with you? My heart hammered violently against my ribs, and a cold sweat broke out all over my body. Mom, don't panic. I have $100,000. I'll transfer it to you right away. I quickly unlocked my phone and tried to transfer my savings, the money I had worked so hard to save. But the screen flashed. Transaction failed. Then I remembered. A month ago, I had given that debit card to Julian for his emergency. Given his massive wealth, he surely wouldn't care about a measly $100,000. But when I logged into my mobile banking app, the cold, glaring balance of $0 made my eyes sting. With trembling hands, I called Julian, but the call wouldn't go through. In my panic, I accidentally opened Snapchat and clicked on Vivian's story. Accidentally crashed a private party, crying over the beautiful love story of our favorite billionaire heir and his gorgeous wife. In the center of her photo grid, Julian and Elena were kissing passionately under the fireworks at a luxury mansion on the hill. A sharp pain pierced my chest, but I didn't have time to think. I quickly traced the location and rushed over. When Vivian saw me at the entrance, her face fell, and she tried to push me back out the door. Julian finally got Elena calmed down. What are you trying to ruin now? I was still weak from my fever. When she pushed me, I lost my balance, fell hard onto the concrete, and a sharp, blinding pain shot through my wrist. Elena sneered, raising her eyebrow at Julian. Julian, did your little mistress switch to a victim-playing strategy now? The surrounding crowd burst into laughter. Julian's wealthy friends looked at him with mocking grins. Man, your standards must have been really low back then. You dated this for 8 years. She's so embarrassing. Julian looked embarrassed and glared at me. Stop acting. Get up right now. There were only 10 minutes left. Anxiety consumed me, and I forced myself to stand up. Julian, give me back my $100,000. Oh, so you're here for money. Elena sneered mockingly. Kneel down, slap yourself, and I'll give you the $100,000. It's pocket change to me anyway. Elena is so generous. Slap yourself once more, and I'll throw in another 10 grand as a wedding tip. Listening to their relentless humiliation, the taste of copper rose in the back of my throat. I am only here to take back what is rightfully mine. Julian, you said your family had an emergency last month, so I gave you a debit card with $100,000 on it. Julian frowned. What debit card? Only 3 minutes left. Tears of pure desperation finally spilled over. My sister is in critical condition. Give me the money back. I'm running out of time. I've never seen any debit card. Besides, where would you even get that much money? Seeing that Julian was denying it, I gritted my teeth and turned to Elena. Is it true? If I kneel and slap myself, you'll give me the $100,000? Julian stared at me in utter disbelief. Chloe, have you lost all your self-respect for some cash? To save my sister's life, I didn't hesitate. I dropped to my knees right in front of Elena. Elena looked down at me with pure disgust, as if she were looking at a piece of garbage. Julian, a mere $100,000 to show you exactly what kind of trash she is? Totally worth it. She pulled out her phone to transfer the money. But Julian grabbed her hand, his expression incredibly complicated. Chloe isn't a gold digger. Don't use money to humiliate her. No matter how much I begged and explained, Julian refused to let Elena send me the money. I watched the clock on the wall hit the hour mark. All the strength was drained from my body, leaving me completely numb and hollow. Julian, the biggest regret of my life was ever meeting you. Lied to for 8 years, and in the end, I lost both my love and my life savings. My heart was completely dead. I turned around and walked away without looking back. The heavy iron gates of the hilltop estate clicked shut behind me, the sound echoing like a guillotine through the silent, rain-slicked street. The wind off the Pacific cut straight to my bones, but I couldn't feel the cold. I couldn't feel my sprained wrist, which throbbed with a dull, distant ache where Vivian had pushed me onto the concrete. All I could see was the ticking clock in my mind. 0. The 1-hour window for Emily's heart transplant had closed. My sister, my sweet, quiet little sister who had always looked up to me, was gone, or dying, because I had spent the last 60 minutes begging a group of mocking strangers for my own hard-earned money. I didn't have money for an Uber. I didn't even have my purse. I had dropped it somewhere in the chaos of the hospital before running out. With nothing but my phone in my hand, its battery clinging to 5%, I began to run. I ran down the winding, lightless roads of the wealthy enclave, my cheap sneakers slipping on the wet asphalt. Every breath felt like inhaling glass. My chest burned from the lingering weakness of my pneumonia, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Please, God, I prayed, a desperate, silent scream in my head. Please let her be okay. Let the doctors have made an exception. Let there be a miracle. By the time I reached the main road, my phone buzzed once and died. The screen went entirely black, taking with it my only connection to the hospital. I ran for 3 miles before a passing delivery van took pity on me. The driver, an older man with kind, tired eyes, didn't ask questions when he saw my tear-streaked face, my soaked clothes, and the purple swelling on my wrist. He simply opened the door and let me in, driving me the rest of the way to the city hospital in silence. When the van pulled up to the emergency entrance, I murmured a quiet thank you and stumbled out. The hospital lobby was quiet, bathed in the sterile, green-tinted glow of late-night fluorescent lights. The smell of bleach and old coffee hit me, making my stomach churn. I pushed through the double doors toward the surgical intensive care unit, my legs shaking so violently I had to drag myself along the handrails. Outside the operating theater, the corridor was empty except for a single figure sitting on the plastic chairs. My mother. She was slumped forward, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent, rhythmic sobs. A cold dread, heavier than anything I had ever felt, settled over my chest. I approached her slowly, my footsteps sounding incredibly loud on the linoleum floor. Mom. My voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and cracked. My mother flinched and looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face incredibly pale. When she saw me, she didn't scream or accuse me. She simply reached out her arms. Chloe, she wept, pulling me down into a tight, desperate embrace. Mom, I'm so sorry. I sobbed into her shoulder, the tears finally spilling over. I tried. I had the money, but Julian, he wouldn't let me. I couldn't get it in time.
I'm so sorry.
Is Emily? Emily is alive, my mother whispered. I froze, pulling back to look at her.
What?
She's in recovery, my mother said, wiping a tear from my cheek with her trembling hand. The surgery was a success. The donor heart was placed half an hour ago. Relief washed over me so suddenly that my knees gave out completely, and I sank onto the floor. But the money, the $100,000, how did you pay the deposit? My mother's face went stiff. She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. A heavy, complicated shadow crossed her features, a look of profound defeat that I had never seen on her face before. I didn't pay it, she said softly. Your grandfather did. I stared at her, my mind struggling to process the words. Grandfather? But Dad said he passed away before I was born. You said we didn't have any family left. My mother let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. She sat down on the floor beside me, oblivious to the cold linoleum, and took my uninjured hand in hers. I lied to you, Chloe. To you and Emily both. She closed her eyes, her voice trembling. My father is very much alive. His name is Arthur Sterling. The name struck me like a physical blow. Arthur Sterling. Anyone who lived on the West Coast, or indeed anyone who knew anything about global commerce, knew that name. He was the reclusive, iron-fisted patriarch of the Sterling Group, a multi-billion-dollar maritime logistics and port authority conglomerate. They didn't just own ships, they owned the very ports the ships docked in. They controlled the flow of trade across the entire Pacific. Compared to the Sterling Group, Julian's family empire was nothing more than a mid-sized fishing fleet. When I met your father, my mother continued, her eyes glassy with memory, he was a junior high-history teacher with nothing to his name. My father demanded I break it off and marry a man of his choosing to consolidate our shipping lanes. When I refused, he told me that if I walked out that door, I would no longer be a Sterling. He stripped me of my trust fund, blocked my inheritance, and forbade any of our relatives from speaking to us. She squeezed my hand tightly. For 30 years, I prided myself on my independence. We lived simply, but we were happy. Your father loved us, and we never needed his billions. But tonight, she choked back a sob. When you didn't call back, and the hospital told me they were going to give the heart to the next child on the list, I realized my pride wasn't worth Emily's life. I called my father's personal secretary. What did he say? I whispered. He didn't hesitate. My mother said, a tear slipping down her cheek. He wired the money to the hospital within 2 minutes. But it came with a price, Chloe. She pulled a folded piece of heavy, cream-colored parchment from her coat pocket and handed it to me. He sent his lawyers to the hospital with the paperwork before Emily was even wheeled into the operating room. To pay for her life, I had to sign away our anonymity. I agreed to return to the Sterling family. And so did you. I unfolded the paper. It was a formal legal agreement, bearing the sleek, embossed seal of the Sterling Group. It detailed the restoration of Sophia Sterling's inheritance, the immediate medical trust set up for Emily, and my own appointment as an executive trainee within the firm's primary West Coast shipping division. The West Coast Shipping Division. The very division that controlled the deep-water berthing rights that Julian Vance's family was currently begging to renew. I stared at the signature at the bottom, my mother's delicate, shaking handwriting next to the bold, sweeping signature of Arthur Sterling. He wants to see us, my mother whispered. Both of us. A car is waiting downstairs. I looked down at my swollen, purple wrist. I thought of Julian's smug, dismissive face as he blocked Elena from giving me the money. I thought of Vivian's cruel push and Elena's mocking laughter. I thought of the 8 years I had spent living in a damp, dark basement, counting pennies and skipping meals so that a billionaire could save up for a ring he never intended to buy. The warmth and softness that had defined me for 27 years suddenly withered away, leaving behind a cold, hard, and unyielding core. Let's go, Mom, I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. Let's go meet my grandfather. The Sterling estate was not a flashy, modern mansion on a hill like the one Julian and Elena had rented for their party. It was a historic, sprawling stone fortress tucked away in the private cliffs of Carmel by the sea, shrouded in ancient cypress trees and the heavy Pacific fog. We were led into a massive, wood-paneled study that smelled of leather, pipe tobacco, and old paper. Behind a heavy mahogany desk sat Arthur Sterling. He was 80 years old, but he carried himself with the posture of a military general. His silver hair was brushed back, and his sharp, steel-gray eyes locked onto us the moment we entered. He didn't stand up. He simply stared at my mother for a long, silent minute. You look old, Sophia, he said, his voice deep and raspy, like grinding stones. So do you, father, my mother replied, her voice remarkably steady. Arthur's gaze shifted to me. He looked at my wet, disheveled hair, my oversized thrift store jacket, and finally my swollen wrist. He frowned, his bushy eyebrows knitting together. Is this the child you raised in a basement? He asked, his tone dripping with quiet disdain. The one who allowed herself to be dragged through the mud by a second-rate harbor shipper's son? I didn't flinch. I walked forward until I was standing directly in front of his desk, looking him straight in the eye. He wasn't just a harbor shipper's son to me, I said coldly. He was the man I loved for 8 years. I didn't know his identity, just as I didn't know yours. But now I know both. And I would like to know what you intend to do about it. A faint, almost imperceptible glimmer of amusement passed through Arthur's steel-gray eyes. The girl has a spine, he murmured to himself. He leaned back in his leather chair, crossing his hands over his chest. Your mother signed the agreement. You are now a Sterling. In 3 days, The Regional Maritime Summit begins in San Francisco. The Vance Group's exclusive lease on the Port of Oakland's primary container terminal is up for renewal. He tapped a thick manila folder on his desk. They need our approval to renew that lease. Without it, their entire shipping empire will choke to death within 6 months. Julian Vance thinks his marriage to the Elena family's logistics firm will save him. He doesn't know that I own 40% of Elena's family business through various shell companies. Arthur leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. I do not tolerate my blood being humiliated by upstarts. I will give you the authority to handle the Vance lease negotiations, Chloe. But you will not do it as a victim seeking revenge. You will do it as the future of the Sterling Group. Can you do that, or are you going to run back to your basement and cry? I looked at the folder. I looked at my sprained wrist. I need 3 things first, I said, my voice quiet but sharp.
Speak.
First, I want the best orthopedic doctor in the state to fix my wrist. Tonight. Arthur nodded once.
Done.
Second, I want a complete financial audit of the Vance Group's accounts from the last 5 years, specifically looking for any transaction involving a debit card ending in 4022. Arthur's assistant, a quiet man in a tailored suit standing in the corner, immediately made a note on his tablet. Third, I said, looking my grandfather dead in the eye, I want Vivian Cole's medical clinic investigated. She took $1 million from Julian to keep a secret, and I suspect her rapid promotion to clinic administrator wasn't entirely based on merit. Arthur Sterling slowly stood up. For the first time, a grim, satisfied smile spread across his weathered face. Welcome home, Chloe, he said. For the next 3 days, I didn't sleep. While Emily recovered in a private, high-security wing of the Sterling Medical Center, I lived in a secure suite at the Sterling Group's headquarters in San Francisco. I underwent a complete transformation, though it was not the kind of superficial makeover Vivian would have envied. Under the tutelage of my grandfather's top executives, I studied maritime law, port tariff structures, and the intricate web of debt that held the Vance Group together. I learned that Julian's father's brain hemorrhage had indeed thrown their company into chaos. Julian was desperate. The wedding of the century was a desperate bid to merge with the Elena family's shipping lines to show liquidity to their creditors. But the Elena family was also hurting. They had over-leveraged themselves in dry bulk carriers right before the market dipped. They were 2 drowning people clinging to each other, pretending they were building a fortress. And the key to their survival was the Port of Oakland lease, owned entirely by Sterling Global. On the morning of the summit, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in my suite. The girl who wore faded sweaters and spent her weekends ironing Julian's shirts was gone. In her place stood a woman wearing a bespoke, charcoal gray double-breasted suit from Seville Row. My hair was pulled back into a sleek, flawless low bun. On my left wrist, beneath the crisp cuff of my silk shirt, was a black medical brace, hidden perfectly from view. On my neck was a simple, elegant platinum chain. No $20 million sapphire necklaces. I didn't need flashy jewels to project power. The Sterling name printed on my ID badge was worth more than Julian's entire fleet. My phone buzzed. It was a secure line from my grandfather's lead investigator. Ms. Sterling, we've completed the audit on the debit card you requested. And, I asked, my voice calm, the debit card ending in 4022, registered under your name, was indeed used. It was never lost or misplaced. The entire $100,000 was drained over a period of 3 days last month. Who authorized the transfers? The IP address is traced back to a luxury villa in Malibu registered to Julian Vance. The funds were used to pay for the offshore custom beading on Elena's wedding gown. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my lips. Julian had taken my life savings, the money I had earned working double shifts, the money I had given him in a moment of sheer panic because he said his family was in danger, and used it to pay for his new bride's wedding dress. And then, he had stood there and called me a gold digger for asking for it back. Thank you, I said to the investigator. Send the certified bank records and the IP tracking reports to my tablet. And the file on Vivian Cole? Ready as well, ma'am. It's worse than we thought. We'll execute the transition whenever you're ready. Excellent. It's time to go to the summit. The San Francisco Grand Ballroom was packed with the elite of the maritime world. Crystal chandeliers gleamed overhead, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, top-shelf champagne, and whispered business deals. Julian Vance stood near the center of the room, looking polished but noticeably tense. His bespoke tuxedo couldn't hide the tight lines around his eyes and the slight tremor in his hand as he held his champagne flute. Beside him, Elena was draped in a silver silk gown, her diamond earrings catching the light as she laughed loudly at something a local politician said. Vivian Cole was there too, hovering just behind Elena like a faithful shadow, holding her purse and looking around the room with an expression of smug satisfaction. She was wearing a designer dress that I knew she couldn't have afforded on her clinic salary, no doubt a gift from Elena for her loyalty. The Sterling representative should be here any minute. I overheard Julian's lead attorney saying, his voice laced with anxiety. If we don't get them to sign the Oakland lease extension today, the bank is going to call in our construction loans on the new eco-tankers. Relax, Julian, Elena said, waving her hand dismissively. My father knows Arthur Sterling's chief of staff. It's just a formality. They wouldn't dare freeze us out. I hope you're right, Julian muttered, rubbing his temples. I haven't slept in days. And that crazy girl Chloe. Ugh, don't mention her name, Vivian chimed in, rolling her eyes. She's probably back in her little basement, crying over her sister. Honestly, Julian, you were too soft on her. Sending her to the hospital with a sprained wrist? She's lucky I didn't press charges for trespassing at the party. She was desperate, Vivian, Julian said, a brief flicker of guilt crossing his face before being replaced by cold resolve. But she had to learn her place. She didn't belong in our world. She certainly doesn't, Elena sneered. A common gold digger. Trying to extort $100,000 with some sob story about her sister. It was pathetic. Just then, the double doors of the ballroom swung open. The chatter in the room died down as a group of security detail in dark suits entered, clearing a path. Behind them walked my grandfather's chief of staff, followed by several senior partners of Sterling Global's legal team. And in the center of them, walking with calm, measured grace, was me. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. I saw the exact moment Julian spotted me. The glass of champagne in his hand tilted, spilling a few drops onto his polished leather shoes. His eyes widened to the size of saucers, and his jaw dropped in sheer, unadulterated shock. See, Chloe, he stammered, his voice cracking so loudly that several nearby guests turned to look. Vivian's smug smile froze on her face. She took a step back, her eyes darting from my tailored Seville Row suit to the security detail flanking me. What is she doing here? How did she get in? Security. Someone get this crazy woman out of here. Elena's face contorted in anger. She marched toward me, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Are you completely insane? Elena hissed, stopping a few feet away from me. Do you have no shame? Tracking us to a private industry summit? Security, arrest this woman. She's a harasser. The two Sterling security guards immediately stepped in front of me, their massive frames blocking Elena. Please step back, Mrs. Vance, the lead guard said, his voice cold and professional. You are interfering with the chief executive representative of Sterling Global. Elena laughed, a shrill, mocking sound. Chief executive? Her? She's a slum-dwelling nobody. She lived in a basement until 3 days ago. That is enough, Elena. A calm, commanding voice echoed from behind us. The crowd parted to reveal my mother, Sophia Sterling. She was wearing a stunning, elegant emerald gown, her posture regal and undeniable. Beside her was Arthur Sterling, walking slowly with his silver-tipped cane, his presence commanding the room's absolute attention. Julian's eyes darted from my mother to Arthur, and then to me. The color drained from his face, so fast he looked as if he might faint. Arthur. Julian's voice was a whisper. Mr. Sterling, what is the meaning of this? Arthur Sterling stopped, leaning heavily on his cane, and looked at Julian with utter disgust. The meaning, Mr. Vance, is that you have been treating my granddaughter like a beggar while using her life savings to fund your wedding. The ballroom erupted into frantic, hushed whispering. Granddaughter? Vivian gasped, her face turning a sickly shade of gray. No, that's impossible. Chloe, your parents are ordinary. You begged me for college tuition help. I stepped forward, looking down at Vivian. My parents chose to live a simple life, Vivian, I said, my voice steady and cold. But my family is Sterling Global, the same Sterling Global that pays your clinic's municipal medical grants. I turned to my assistant, who immediately handed me a leather folder. I opened it and looked at Vivian. Speaking of your clinic, Vivian, we conducted a brief review of your credentials and the financial allocations under your administration over the past 3 years. It seems that a sum of $400,000 in state medical grants was diverted into a private offshore account registered under your name. The same account you used to purchase that dress you're wearing tonight. Vivian's knees buckled. She reached out to grab a nearby cocktail table to steady herself, her eyes wide with terror. No. Chloe, please. We've been friends for 10 years. 10 years, I repeated, my voice devoid of warmth. And you sold that friendship for $1 million to keep Julian secret. You suggested he use fake car accidents and scams to bleed me dry of my rent money, so he wouldn't have to marry me. You pushed me onto the concrete when my sister was dying. Our friendship ended the moment you decided my sister's life was worth less than your designer bags. I looked at the security guards. Take Ms. Cole out. The police are waiting in the lobby to discuss the embezzlement charges. Chloe, please. No. Julian, help me. Vivian screamed as the guards firmly grabbed her arms and began dragging her out of the ballroom. The guests shrank away from her, whispering in hushed, horrified tones. Elena stood frozen, her eyes darting between Julian and me. Julian, what is she talking about? What debit card? What $1 million? Julian didn't answer her. He was staring at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of terror, regret, and a desperate, pathetic pleading. Chloe. Julian took a step toward me, his hands shaking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about your family. If I had known. If you had known, you would have treated me with respect? I interrupted, my voice cutting through his words like a scalpel. So, you only treat people with basic human decency if they have a $1 billion trust fund behind them? If they are poor, they deserve to be lied to, cheated on, and humiliated. No, that's not what I meant. Julian pleaded, reaching out to grab my arm. The security guards immediately moved to block him, but I raised my hand, stopping them. I wanted him to come closer. I wanted him to look into my eyes and see exactly what he had lost. Julian, I said softly, where is my $100,000? Julian swallowed hard, his eyes darting to Elena, then back to me. I had to use it, Chloe. The company was in trouble. I was going to pay you back, I swear. I just needed some time. You used it to buy the custom beading on Elena's wedding dress, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried perfectly in the silent room. While you were telling me you couldn't afford a $500 engagement ring, you were using my sweat and blood to dress your new bride. The crowd gasped. The look of disgust on the faces of the onlookers, the very peers Julian had spent his life trying to impress, was palpable. Elena's face turned bright red. You used her money for my dress? Julian, you told me your father bought that for me. Shut up, Elena. Julian snapped, his composure completely cracking. He ignored his wife and dropped to his knees right there on the marble floor, in front of the entire West Coast shipping elite. Chloe, please, he begged, tears streaming down his face as he reached for the hem of my trousers. I love you. I've always loved you. The marriage to Elena was just a business deal. I was going to divorce her in 6 months, I swear. I was going to come back to you. Please don't do this to me. Don't ruin my family. I looked down at him. 4 or 5 years, I had lived in a cramped, dark basement, breathing in mold and damp air, dreaming of the day this man would put a cheap ring on my finger. I had loved him with every fiber of my being. But looking at him now, groveling on the floor, I felt nothing but a profound, empty pity. Get up, Julian, I said coldly. You're embarrassing yourself. Chloe, please. The Sterling Group has officially declined the Vance Group's application for the Oakland port lease renewal, I announced, my voice echoing clearly through the ballroom. Furthermore, as the majority shareholder in the Lin family logistics firm, we will be vetoing the proposed merger between our companies, effective immediately. Elena gasped, clutching her pearls as she stared at her father's legal representatives, who were already nodding in agreement with me. You're ruining us, Julian whispered, his face completely pale. We'll go bankrupt. You chose money over loyalty, Julian, I said, turning my back on him. And now you have neither. I walked toward my mother and grandfather, who were waiting for me near the exit. Chloe, please. Julian's desperate cries echoed behind me, followed by the sound of security guards restraining him as he tried to run after me. I didn't look back. We stepped out of the grand ballroom and into the crisp, clean night air of San Francisco. The fog was rolling in over the bay, but for the first time in 8 years, my vision was completely clear. My sister Emily was safe and recovering. My mother was finally free of the burden of her pride. And I was no longer the girl in the basement. I took a deep, clean breath of the ocean breeze, feeling the cold air fill my lungs, and smiled.